Are you ready for the heavyweight championship of the world? Are you ready?
Hey, welcome to Anna's Corner, bringing you another episode of Unanimous Decision. And today, who we talking to, Bill?
Hey, we got a good one. Exclusive interview. You know what that is? That's our interview series. And today we have a music producer who is hailing out of New Jersey. He's worked with everyone from Whitney Houston to Beyonce to the Isley Brothers. He's also the person responsible for the monster smash Missing You off of the Set It Off soundtrack. Today we have super producer Gordon Chambers.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
All right, welcome to the show, Mr. Chambers. How you feeling?
Doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, it's time to step into the ring. So I have to ask, in the past, you've stated, and I want to make sure that I'm getting it correct. It's Teaneck?
Teaneck.
Oh, Teaneck. All right, so you stated that Teaneck, New Jersey is the place where you got all your musical training. So what did you learn from Teaneck that you couldn't get anywhere else?
Teaneck, I would say, is someplace that made pursuing of my musical dreams feel tangible and hopeful. I was born in the Bronx, in a very Jamaican enclave. I'm of Jamaican parentage, enclave of the Northeast Bronx. And my parents moved to Teaneck, New Jersey when I was 7, like 1976. When some amazing music came out, Songs of the Key of Life, my favorite album of all time. At that particular time, they moved to Teaneck, New Jersey, Teaneck is historically the first school in the country to voluntarily desegregate its schools. So Teaneck had an amazing public school system, which is why my parents moved there, with great music, free musical education. So there were free music lessons. When I was in elementary, I started with the trumpet, was my first instrument, but then I also took private piano lessons. My piano teacher, older, very white Swedish lady, but with the most anti-racist spirit I've ever known. She was a neighbor. She was in walking distance from the house. So as a child, I started studying music with great local music teachers, and continued doing so all the way to the end of high school. So my schooling was a very typical musical kids, education. I was a very bright student. I actually skipped a grade and graduated high school at 16. So I was in many, many honors classes, but I was also moonlighting in the bands, both the school band, then the marching band, and we had a jazz band, and we even had, like in high school, like a pop cover band called New Progression. So I just, Teaneck gave me confidence because it gave me audience. It gave me, education. It gave me teachers, but it gave me family. I have my mother's 3 sisters lived in Teaneck. So every time, there was a recital or something, we came hard. We came packing, whatever it was that we were doing. But just also on a holiday, a Thanksgiving or a Christmas, it would be very like, Gordon, get on the piano and I wasn't singing so much. I didn't start singing more till the college, but it was like, get on the piano and play the songs for whoever wanted to sing, playing by ear. I could play music by ear, which is actually how I learned chord changes and taught myself how to be a songwriter. And I had encouragement as a songwriter as a kid. In a 6th grade, there was a musical teacher that gave the class an assignment to write a little short story of some kind about the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And instead I wrote her a song. I said, well, I just chose to write a song about it. She said, really, you wrote a song? And she said, let me hear the song. And I got on the piano and showed her the song. She said, that's a great song. Let's have the whole 6th grade class learn the song and perform it at 6th grade graduation. So I got encouragement like that from my town, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. And you've had some, you were guided by some jazz artists.
Yes.
Correct. Lenny White.
Yep.
Some
Dick
others.
Griffin.
Dick Griffin.
Rufus.
How much does jazz play a part in your musical creativity?
Right. Teaneck is a town where, to this day, many people in music and entertainment lived there. They moved there for for the school systems because it was a place where they could get free public school kids for their schooling for their kids.
Mhm.
And it's like 15 minutes you can be in Harlem from Teaneck, or 8 minutes if there's no traffic over the George Washington Bridge. You can be in Midtown in 30 minutes. So we, as a kid, some of my neighbors where I delivered papers to included Brooke Shields, the actress, Kool and the Gang, Millie Jackson, lived around the corner from us. I delivered papers to all these people as kids. But there were also jazz musicians we had jazz programs. We had something called the Magnet School that was in the late 70s and 80s, where we had like this sort of jazz programming, like after school jazz things for the students. And some of the local jazz musicians who lived in the town came and did our lessons for us. And some of them became personal, I guess, friends or mentors. And I'd go to their houses, outside of the program, just hang out with them and show them my songs and show them what I was playing. They took great interest in me and really cultivated me. The jazz bass player, Rufus Reed, the trombonist, Dick Griffin, and then the producer and drummer, he was in a band called Return to Forever called Lenny White, who I met a little bit later, more like high school, early college years, but they were neighbors. And, when you live in a small town like that and you're like a town's prodigy, quote unquote, the word gets out that there's a kid who's very talented, and the word got out. I also started learning about gospel music, in my junior high and high school years, because I was raised in a Episcopalian church, which was more Jesus Christ is risen, very that. But in Teaneck, but one town over was Englewood, New Jersey, where Regina Bell and Bernard Bell, songwriter who wrote "Remember the Time," who just passed away, that town had a lot more churches with gospel music. So I started learning, people was like, oh, you need to go check out this church or meet this choir director, and started learning about gospel music from my friends there who were into gospel. Some of them went on to become recording artists. Like there was a friend named Big Bub, singer named Big Bub, who was in the group called Today.
Yeah.
He was a writer. He wrote on Mary's first My Life album, and was one of the co-writers on My Prerogative with Bobby Brown. So, he was a childhood neighbor and friend. So that was the Englewood scene, which was learning about gospel. But I was learning about jazz from some of those, those teachers that were professional jazz musicians in Teaneck. So it was a great and learning classical music from my classical pianist teacher, and also just writing songs just to express myself, to show as hobbies, or and when I was in high school, one of my close friends was murdered, Danielle Morton. And I was very deep in grief and sadness and shock. So in order to try to do something to commemorate her and memorialize her, I wrote a song that, I played for her parents and some of the other teachers, and they wanted to have a public performance of the school. So there were things like that. The town was a great incubator for my talent and expression and cultivating audience.
Okay. So who, if I had to ask, you said gospel played a pretty good part, jazz definitely. Who are some of the ones, any artists that you like listening to, or maybe someone like I can see like a James Cleveland.
Yes.
Godfather, in my opinion.
Of course. Yeah. I would say like in that particular period, like this is the early 80s when I'm in junior high. The people I was discovering were the Winans, commissioned, Fred Hammond, the earlier commissioned albums. All the Winans. This is, BB and CC were a little bit later, but this is the Winans. Vanessa Bell Armstrong, the Hawkins, especially the album Love Alive 3. I wore that album, Wait on the Lord and Be of Good Courage. When the Battle is Over, Return, O Backslider. I mean, I would say that album probably more so than any other album, back to back. I played that album inside out, I never heard any music that sounded like that. It was so grand, so the way the chords moved, very jazzy. Like it had like jazz chords, and the sophistication of the choirs and just the emotion of it and just the tightness of it. Like I just never heard anything that sounded like that. It blew especially because I grew up in a more Episcopalian church. Like when I started to hear that music in churches I started hanging out at and playing the trumpet in churches and going to, but when I heard it on records, especially that particular album, it did something for my spirit that I think helped inspire my songwriting career. Because I think as a songwriter, when I started to write, songs professionally, if you notice in my catalog, they have big vocals. My songs have big, thick layers of background vocals, and they're thick. And even if I sang all the parts myself, or it was just myself and one other singer, my songs, I've written many different kinds of songs in different genres, but one characteristic that of my whole songwriting, I say sound, no matter what genre the song is, it's a sound of big vocals. And I think that very much was influenced by some of that, the Winans and the Hawkins, that contemporary gospel sound, like the way they layered, the richness of the way they layered those voices and layered them like chords, and the jazziness of the notes, and of course Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace, which was done with James Cleveland, probably the finest gospel record of all time, but later Yolanda Adams, who I talked to earlier today, the contemporary gospel sound was a huge influence on me as a songwriter and producer in the way I approached making R&B songs that I've done, which is most of what I've done is in R&B, but not exclusively, because I've written jazz pieces and house music and country music, but approaching songs that have big vocals, soaring melodies, but also deep emotion. I always try to make my music sound very emotional, and I think gospel music and my exposure to gospel music helped impact the emotionality, quote unquote, if that's a word, of my music. Yeah,
that makes total sense. The gospel, because it's so much put into it.
Sure.
And here's the weird part of your career path, Mr. Chambers. So I'm hearing a lot of your upbringing, and I hear a lot of musical influences, but I also hear there's that I guess the sophistication with the pen as well. So you had a fork in the road where you could have either chose writing or music, and your career path would have been extremely different. I do want to bring up something. In 1993, you worked at Essence.
Yes.
So was the goal with that opportunity to excel in the world of editorials, or were you looking for it as a launching pad when it came to your musical career?
I would say a bit of both, probably more so the latter. The job at Essence, I started at Essence at 1990, actually.
Okay.
I got promoted to entertainment editor, at I think it was maybe late 92 or early 1993. And left in 1997 as entertainment editor. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved the written word. Like as a child, one of my aunts gave all the other cousins toys, and she gave me a book. She gave me this Nikki Giovanni poetry book called Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day. I still have that book. The cover is tattered and torn, but I treasured that book. And in that book, there was a poem called Poem for Aretha. And I was so fascinated that this poet wrote a poem about Aretha Franklin. Like, I just loved that book. But even as a child, I loved the Bible. I loved reading the Bible. I loved the language of it. I loved how, oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. And as we enter into the house of the Lord, we sing praises to our God. I love the way the words flowed, the majesty and the craft of the words. And I always loved reading. English was always my favorite subject. So I always loved the written word and loved the feeling, loved the emotion of words. And in college, did some writing and some poetry writing, some nonfiction writing, and some editing for a college campus literary magazine called UASO at Brown University, where I graduated. And then when I got out of college, I needed a job. I was going to do this program, Teach for America. I applied for some jobs, didn't get them. First I started college as a pre-law, and then I had to call my father and say, "Daddy, I don't want to be a pre-law." My father was so pissed at me because I had a full scholarship to Princeton, didn't go to that, said I wanted to go to Brown. I felt like it was more creative, more interesting, more of my personality. But then I said I was going to go to Brown to be a lawyer. Then I called him like, "Daddy, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I'm still going to graduate on time. I'm going to figure it out." My advisor got my degree I graduated on time, got my degree in American Studies. So and I just was like, I had to figure out how to be myself and be happy. And then when I applied for this job at Essence, it just seemed cool. It seemed like the pay was terrible. My father was pissed. After all this money he paid for me to go to college, accept this job paying these pennies. But it seemed cool. It seemed like connected to the industry, actually, and in an ancillary way connected to the music industry, which I knew was ultimately what I wanted to pursue. But it also just seemed like Black intelligentsia, sophisticated Black excellence. It just seemed like a place that I just wanted to be. I was just gravitated to it. I applied not knowing a soul. And then when I got the job, I remember just walking into the job the first day, I was just so excited, like chills came off my body. I couldn't believe I was in this Black owned business in the heart of Midtown that was Black owned, that was majority Black employees, probably 85% of the employees were Black. And it felt like dreams could come true. I don't know, that's the word. Being there made me feel like, just like I said about Teaneck, it made my dreams feel tangible, And so it was like a good launch pad in a way. I ended up meeting Queen Latifah through the magazine. I interviewed her for the magazine. had a cassette of one of my songs, because at that time I would just go sending songs to like record companies or sending, material to people. So this is in the cassette days, I actually had a cassette and let her hear, gave her a cassette of one thing after an interview. She asked me, I didn't approach her. She's like, are you a musician? I said, yeah, she wanted to hear some of my music. I said, oh, really? I was kind of nervous, but she approached me. I guess she said, there's just something about you. I can just feel like, and so she ended up becoming one of my first, major songwriting collaborations. So Essence did become like a good, launching pad. But Essence was also very supportive. I mean, when I first started to write hit songs, was while I was still working at Essence, and I'd have to go to the job.
I didn't know that part. Like when you said from 1990 to 1997, I did the math, and I didn't know you were still there after.
I was still there. Like when I Apologize for Nita came out, and Brown, You Love Me, and Missing You, to me, a Brandy Shock last night. I did all that music while I was at work.
Crazy.
I'd have to go, after work to the recording studios, to meet with the producers I was working with. Puffy's studio was right around the corner. Sometimes I remember even going to go to the studio during lunchtime and writing something real quick and laying down a scratch vocal and either been like, okay, here it is. I'll come back, telling the engineer, put this together, and I'll come back after work and finish it out, because it was right around the corner. Pitching, I would walk, we had a 90-minute lunch break at Essence. So I'd sometimes walk to record companies that were walking distance, 10 minutes walking distance to, pitch meetings, pitch songs. And it all started happening while I was there working at Essence, and it's
crazy.
I was there, I was there with a job and a dream that was coming true, but I still had my job.
You still had the job.
I still had a job. And I was entertainment editor, so I had a very in-demand job. My job was to be the frontline person on all the editorial, on all the arts, from literary to visual arts to music to theater to, all of that.
Yeah.
And I was a senior editor with all the senior editorial decisions, not just for my section, but, just that, we called it center of the book, like the features. I was the entertainment editor, so I had my pages of entertainment, but I was also one of the features editor. So I was involved with all of it. It was a very demanding job, very exciting, but very demanding. I did it for 5 years in that post. And then Susan, and I had a conversation, she's like, she was very honest. She said, Gordon, I could keep you here forever, but I think the world would be denied of all that, God intends you to do with your music. So she, in a very maternal, mentoring way, was like, so Gordon, it's time for you to go. She said, train your assistant who you've excellently hired to groom her into your position in 6 weeks, and then it's time for you to go. And she said, and we as a company will continue to be supportive of you,
Nice.
way. And they were. Like, Essence wrote stories about me, actually, after I left. I performed at the Essence Music Festival after I left, when I made my first record as a performer. I continued to write stories for Essence. I continued to consult. I even helped groom one of the other entertainment editors after me. I continued to stay involved, with the magazine. And Susan Taylor, to this day, is one of my close personal friends, So I learned a lot there about life and purpose and passion and values and family and ethics and professionalism and community and mentorship and contribution. It was really more than just a job. It was a place that, in my segue to adulthood, and I started there when I was 20 years old. I remember introducing myself to the CEO of the company. I said, in the bathroom one day, I said, "Mr. Lewis, I just want to introduce myself because I just want to let you know I'm not one of the interns. I'm actually full-time." And he looked at me like you're talking to me. I was, that young, young enough to be one of the college interns, but I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
So I learned so much there. So many things that I still, values that still serve me to this day.
Nice.
Being on time, for things, being getting back to people, treating people respectfully, were things that I learned. I knew a lot of that at home growing up, but those were values that I put into the professional world that have served me, still serve me, 25 years having left, as a full-time position.
Nice. I've read that one of the greats, correct me if I'm wrong, Whitney Houston encouraged you to come from behind
Yes, you did.
the boards to on stage.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
Well, interestingly enough, I think it was 1995 or 1996. I got asked if I didn't record my first solo album, Introducing Gordon Chambers, until 2000 and I think it was released December 2003. I think I started recording it in 2002. But I was, I wasn't really a performer per se. I wasn't pursuing it like that. But if people asked, people knew I could sing because, people around town knew that I could sing, and I had done gigs here and there, like in the early 90s. But as I got busier with Essence, I wasn't doing as much of them. But there were people in the scene that knew that I could sing. Plus, when Brownstone's album came out, I sang on that album. I sang Half of You. That was like a duet with them. They heard me singing background vocals. I sang a feature on Naughty by Nature's album. So people knew that I was a singer. So when people asked me to sing at a function, I would sing. I wasn't always actively out there pursuing it as much, but they knew. So I remember there was a festival. It was like a convention called I Am, that this woman, Diana Williams, who's Kenny Gamble's ex-wife, and she's like kind of a music activist, tastemaker, radio personality. She's on a lot of the Unsungs. If you watch Unsung, she's often in Unsung. And her son recently passed, rest in peace. But Diana Williams is actually one of the founders of African American Music Month. She had this convention that she asked me to perform at. And I remember she asked me to perform, and they were honoring Dee Dee Bridgewater, actually. And I was singing in honor of Dee Dee Bridgewater, the great jazz legend. And Whitney was in the audience. She and Bobby sat in the front row, and I was doing these sketches. And I remember her looking at me like, she's like, you ever seen Whitney, like when somebody's in the audience, how she gives you all those faces and all that encouragement. But I remember like Whitney, the first time I ever met Whitney I was singing. But it took many years that was probably 1994, 1995. I didn't produce her until we worked on the Just Whitney album and then the Christmas album after that, probably 7-8 years later. But the first time I actually met her was when I was singing at that convention. But when we finally by this time I'd left Essence, and I worked with her at Essence because she was on the cover of Essence, and that was part of my job as entertainment editor to make sure that story happened. And she was awarded by Essence Music Awards, which I was part of the planning team for that. So we had our professional relationships in that capacities. I would say my office and her management offices, But I finally spent more quality time personally with her when we finally worked on the albums, and I was down in Atlanta for weeks at a time. And in the studio, there was a note I was trying to get her to hit, and I needed for her to hit the note higher. Now, everybody knows I am very demanding in the studio. I am really fun.
You showed her better than you could tell her, basically.
But I don't play around in my sessions. Like, you come to sing on a session with me for anything, or a live performance, I don't play around with no vocals. I'm sorry. I learned too much from them Hawkins and them Watkins back in the day to be playing around with no vocals. I don't play around. Even as a vocal coach, which I do a lot of now, I'm demanding. But I'm joyful, and I believe in your ability to have God use you and sing to your heart's desire and content. So once I finally was so elated and excited to finally get into the studio with my Jersey homegirl, Whitney Houston, like, oh my God, like, this was the moment after writing for, the Patties and the Tamias and the Gladyses and the Faith Evans and the, so many of the amazing voices, Deborah Cox, Faith Evans, Carl Thomas, that I worked for. No honor was greater than working for Whitney Houston, no greater. But the stakes were so high. Because Joey Arbogee, who was the A&R working for L.A. Reid at the time, who gave me the assignment to put me, not just as the writer, but the producer, was like, okay, Gordon, you're going to produce Whitney, and you got to get these vocals, and you got to get them by this time, and blah, blah. I mean, the stakes were high. So here I am, this is my dream come true. I love Whitney. She loves me. We got along like family. I miss her and loved her very deeply as a person, and still do. But the stakes were high. I'm like, Joey's breathing down my back, like, come on, So it's like dream come true, precious high all at the same time. Yeah. So I'm like, when we were doing the Christmas song, I'm like, Whitney, I need you to, okay, we got to bring this home, blah, blah, blah. So I was just like, I need you to hit this one, and I'm singing her, demonstrating the note. So she comes out of the booth and she walks up to me and she said, I think you want to do what I do, baby. And if that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. All in one sentence. I think you want to do what I want to do, baby. And if that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. Well, all that she does, She said, but I'm gonna give you a note, and she did give me the note that I wanted. But she spoke spirit into me. She spoke, inspiration. Remember, the first time I ever met her, she saw me singing. So I think at that moment, as producer, when she heard me really hit this note, and I had to sing it and go sing it for real, not like play at singing. I had to sing it for real because we're on the clock. And she did sing it. She also saw in that moment that, this was my desire as well. And so that was like, after years of thinking about it and wondering, should I not, blah, blah, blah. Is it too late? Am I too old? Didn't have a record deal, tried to get record deals earlier in my 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, got close, but didn't get close, but yet so far. This time I'm in my early 30s, like, people are starting to release their records independently. Nora Jones, Kim, John Legend, these are people that I heard about their independent, successes that led to them getting signed by majors. So I was like, okay, well, tried to get a record deal before, it didn't really work out. But here, Whitney Houston, the greatest singer of the 20th century, telling me.
Giving you affirmation.
And so, we did finish the session on time. I got the record done. It came out great. And then I came back to New York and prayed on it, went to church and said, I think God is sending me this message that the time is now. And I got in touch with a lot of my producer friends. Now, these are people that I worked on music. We used to write songs together for other people anyway. Yeah. I was like, listen, I think I'm ready to try to make a record. And sometimes we can get on our own way. But everybody that I asked, musically, these are friends of mine, from the, producers to engineers, people that I knew. But we were usually working together as work for hire for other people. Yeah. They were like, okay, I don't have a lot of money, but I think I want to give this a go. Everyone supported me. Everyone. Nice. Even one of my music publishers at the time, Shakir Stewart, because I wanted to go and cut music with a live band. He passed away. Was like, he just arranged it and had the publishing company, front the bill for it. I was like, really, Shakir? He said, yeah. And he said, Gordon, he set up a PO of $25,000 for me to take a band and to record with the live music sessions. I couldn't believe he was going to do that. And I didn't think that he was the guy who discovered Usher's Yeah, and signed Sean Garrett. And he was at the time became my music publisher. He became the president of publishing, but he was more like into a different kind of music than he was more into street R&B than I was more classic.
Yeah.
Under him, Billy Calloway became more who I worked more closely with. But Shakir, one day I said, Shakir, this is what I want to do. And he just said, oh, okay, let me make this happen for you. And I said, really? And I said, Shakir, I'm so surprised. He said, Gordon, he said, after all you've done for music, if this is something that you want to do, I want to support you in doing it right and doing it the way you want to do it. It's very emotional when I think about it, because he was not even the person I thought would have been supportive of it like that. He made it. So once I, things started to align, and once I, her encouragement and her inspiration was major. Troy Taylor was major in helping me put that first 2 albums together. Prince Charles Alexander was an engineer, Barry Eastman. These were guys that, I worked on projects for other people with, but once I said, I want to try to do this on my own, they were very helpful.
Wow.
On my own.
It's amazing the type of endorsements you get, because it's like you're telling us the story and you're also revealing your track record. So from my vantage point, I'm like, I could see why somebody would want to endorse him because of his contribution to R&B and music.
Absolutely.
So just with that story, like I felt like that's like the theme of your career. The pressure's always going to be high for you, because I think people are always kind of putting you in that pressure cooker to deliver. And another example I want to give, because I want to bring up a soundtrack. And at the time, they basically entrusted you with bringing that soundtrack to life. So the Set It Off soundtrack, the number 1 song on the album, I don't think a lot of thought goes into how does a song end up on the soundtrack. Can you walk us through how Missing You ends up on the Set It Off soundtrack, and then your involvement with that?
Yes. Barry Eastman and I co-wrote Anita Baker's I Apologize, and it did extremely well. Sylvia Rohn at that time, who was the president of Elektra Records, became, big supporters of ours. So she said, I'm doing a soundtrack for this film, Set It Off, and I need an end title track. And I said, okay, this is exciting. We had to rewrite the song 3 times.
Wow.
Because at first, it's like whenever you work on film, like there's many more people who have to say yes to things, many more greenlighters. There's a record company, there's the director, sometimes even an executive producer on the film. Everybody has to agree. So I remember we had to rewrite the song 3 times. And finally they accepted the song. Then they were trying to cast the song. Then that was a whole big drama. The first casting, they wanted Roberta Flack and Lauryn Hill to sing together, because Killing Me Softly had, recently come out and was a big hit. So that was the first casting. Lauryn said yes. Roberta was like, well, I have these writers that I work with that I want them to rewrite some portions of the song or be involved. And I never knew what that was about. I never knew if I never really talked about it, like if that was her feeling or she was kind of just down with them, and who knows. But the record company was like, no, we're not waiting for Roberta and her demands, so to speak. So that deaded that. So then they decided to cast it as a quartet. So our first session was Brandy and Tamia. No, our first session was Tamia and Gladys. We recorded them in the same day. I had a ball with them. It was a beautiful day, beautiful experience. When Gladys first sang that, that verse, I mean, I nearly fell off the floor, fell off. And Gladys was my favorite, like, childhood singer. Like, my mom says she knew I was going to be a professional music because she was bathing me, and at 2, she heard me like singing the Pips part to His Way. She heard the baby go on pitch and on time. So that was just this amazing day. Then we did Shaka's vocals another day. I'm totally intimidated by Shaka. She's like my favorite singer of all time. she didn't really all the way know the song. So I'm like, oh, it goes like this. She said, will you come up here? She was like, go ahead and come up in here and sing the song for me. Like she made me go in the booth with her. And Barry's like, go. I'm like, I can't sing for Shaka Khan.
Yeah, it's Shaka Khan. Like, what are we doing here?
So, and then the last vocalist, I wasn't on that final session, was Mary did vocals on it, Mary J. Blige. So, you know, I was all excited. Mary J. Blige, she's amazing. She's Mary J. Blige. She's the queen of the industry. But then Mary had a change in management, and then the management decided that they didn't want to be on the song. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
The reason we got was that she was overexposed, whatever that means. There was all this trouble. Like we had to take Mary's vocals off. And then Sylvia was like, you know what, I'm gonna put Brandy on this record. Because Brandy was signed to Atlantic, which was part of the same record company. Sylvia just was like, you know what, I can call this in. I'm just gonna have Brandy do it. And Brandy, I think Brandy's the reason why that record became such a big pop hit, because Brandy vocals started it, and you know the innocence of Brandy's tone, you know, it was like air shimmering. Like she was the magic sauce in that record. The timing of when it came out, she was just her debut. I think was kind of just winding down while this was winding up. I can't remember. This was before Never Say Never, but the timing was perfect for something from Brandy and something slightly more mature. And she was hanging with the big girls. She was hanging with Gladys, and you know, and holding her own, you know. And Tamia made sense because Tamia came into the industry singing more adult music. She came out right with Quincy Jones. So you know, Brandy, you never heard Brandy sing something with this kind of maturity and this kind of depth, and she nailed it. Yeah. So it was exciting, you know. It was very exciting to fly out to California and you know work on this and you know meet Gladys Knight. It was all about meeting Gladys Knight in person. That was the first, you know, like she, you know, because she meant so much to my parents, and I had Gladys call my mom in the studio, and my mother.
Wow.
She hung. I told her it was a surprise, and my mother hung up on her, and she said, "It's Gladys. I'm here with your son Gordon." You know, so it was very exciting. But you know, that song, I wrote that song lyrically. My grandmother had just passed, and I never saw my mother be that sad. Mommy had gone into like this very deep depression, and I was thinking about my grandmother. I was thinking about you know her, just the grieving process. That as a family we were going through when grandma passed away unexpectedly. And many years later, I sang it at my aunt's funeral, my mother's older sister, and I was singing it from the family, but singing it like from, you know, she was the big sister who was like the matriarch for, you know, for all the family. So, you know, it meant a lot to me personally, you know, because it came from a real place from our family. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If in listening at all of these artists, these iconic artists who you've worked with, if you can write an entire album for anyone, past, who's here with us, who's not here with us, if you can just sit and you guys, okay, I'm writing this album directly for you. We're locked in the studio, how many days, months, whatever we need. Who would you choose? One person.
Rihanna.
I feel like I know because of the hometown, but I need to hear you say it.
I just love Rihanna's voice. I just think
Rihanna.
Oh, see, I was going to.
I heard he said Rihanna.
Oh, I didn't know. All right, go ahead.
Really?
First of all, Rihanna just looks like such a fun chick. She just seems like such a fun person to just be around. But seriously, like I would love to do just do maybe a more adult kind of ballady EP with Rihanna, like something different than what she usually does.
Yeah.
And just like make some music with Rihanna. She's just like, I'm so proud of her as a fellow Caribbean, but I love her tone. I love her tone. It's so signature. It's like she starts singing, you know it's her. It's like a brand in her voice. It's like it's a sound.
All right, so this is the cool part, because you mentioned the younger artists, right? And I think that's fascinating. Now, your music is constantly being referenced and sampled today. Like I could mention a couple names like Tory Lanez with the Brownstone. How selective are you when it comes to like new artists sampling your material?
Not at all. Half the times I don't even know. I mean, really, like, I'm like,
that's funny.
Yeah.
I be like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
When Tory Lanez had sampled, If You Love Me, I did not even hear it till months later.
Wow.
There's a resurgence of the Brownstone record now because of that. Like I know Brownstone, but you can't escape IG without hearing somebody with a new dress playing that music. So I'm like, it bridges the gap between new fans and old fans.
But really and truly, like when Tory did Say It, it bubbled up, in the underground part of the hip hop culture. It was on the underground stations first, the college stations of the deep hip hop stations, way before it kind of got to the more mainstream kind of contemporary hip hop stations. I didn't even know what those stations were. Like the underground, like I did not know. We were like, oh, this dude, sampled your record. I'm like, really? I had not heard it for months. And I remember like one time I heard it on the radio, but it was like by the time I got to the station, like the phone rang and I had to go somewhere. And I was like, I didn't even have to, by the time I found out, I said, I couldn't even listen to it like I had to go. At a gig, I was performing somewhere and I was trying to listen to it. They're like, you need to come in here now. They're about to announce you. I'm like, okay. So I didn't hear it. The first time I heard that record on the radio, believe it or not, was I had a major house fire on Valentine's Day of 2016. Major fire. And I spent the night in Brooklyn at my adopted aunt's house across the street. And the next day, my parents came to see me and my brother and my nephew. And my nephew was in my parents' car and he was controlling the radio because it's up in the front seat or whatever. And he played the station and he said, Uncle Gordon, I told you your song was on the radio. And he was one of the young people who'd been telling me, he was like a 13, 14 at the time, that it was on the radio. So he found the station and that was the first. I remember it was pouring rain and I just started to cry. I was like, Lord have mercy. Like at this really challenging time of my life, when life is really upside down, this young rapper who I've never met still today thought enough of my song out of all the millions of the songs in the world and sampled this song, and here it comes and it's on the radio now. It was surreal to me, very, very, very surreal. So, yes, and there's been other covers of it. Bryson Tiller has sampled one of my records. It's been a beautiful unexpected salute. Many of these guys I've not met yet. I just want to say thank you. Take my little selfie as a fan and just say thank you very much. Hopefully that'll happen in some day or space or time. But in a way, it kind of came full circle because a lot of my earliest roots and my earliest professional recording sessions were in the hip hop community. Like I said, I sang on the Naughty by Nature album. My first major, the first gold record I worked on was with Latifah. I used to do a lot of work with KG from Who's Down with Naughty by Nature. He was a producer, but he's also part of Nature by Nature. So I knew Rich and Vinny, used to see him at the studio all the time. So the track masters who produced some R&B, but produced a whole lot of
rap.
Jesse Powell together, rest in peace. They did a lot of rap. So Diddy had the whole hit maker, Stevie J. I worked on R&B with him on Tevin Campbell's For Your Love, and with Tamia, we
For Your Love,
worked with him on R&B projects. But Stevie was, we could be in one studio here and Biggie's in the next. So it was part of the same culture. Even Little Kim was like, "Don't look into my eyes," singing "I Apologize." It was her lyrics because she told me she loved "I Apologize." So I knew some of these people because it was the same scene, the same culture, And so when years later the songs got sampled by rappers, it was kind of like a full circle kind of a moment in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let me ask you, being a singer or a writer, what would you choose first? Or what do you enjoy more? Let me ask you that. I'm sorry. What do you enjoy more, being a singer or a writer?
I think being a singer. I don't have to write to get enjoyment of the music. You know what I mean? I enjoy music. Like I enjoy just as much singing a song that I wrote as a song that I greatly respect, just as much, you know. I'm grateful, very grateful for the opportunities that I've had as a songwriter, to help me express myself. You know, it's been very therapeutic. Some of the songs that I've written have, you know, been from very real emotions. But when I get up in the morning and like I'm making up my making coffee, I'm probably just singing a song that's just in, like this morning, Yolanda Adams' Spirit has been on my mind the last couple of days. You know, I love Yolanda, and, you know, she's been in the media in the last couple of days, and, you know, I just wanted to give her a love shout, you know, and so I just sang a little snippet of No, You Are My Friend by Patti LaBelle. I just put a little video and sent it to her, you know, and she just wrote me right back, you know, just that was the song that was in my spirit at that moment. So it's not like always like my own songs are in my own head, so to speak.
Okay.
I love to write, you know, I love writing to express what I want to express. It's given me a great lifestyle. I'm grateful for the opportunities, the royalties. I'm grateful. You know, but my connection to writing songs was songs that I heard and that I loved. It was my love for songs that I heard as a child and singing along with them and seeing the mechanics of how that song, you know, was constructed and made, and then teaching myself how to play it on the piano. Like that led to writing, you know what I mean? So to speak. Yeah. Gotcha. So I would say probably singing. If I had to choose, I would say singing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Something just really popped up in my head as you said something. Sorry about this, Barry.
You good?
How great is Quincy Jones?
Well, Quincy Jones is the culture. You know, Quincy Jones is more than music. He is one of the most cultured and sophisticated and erudite and learned Black men of the 20th century. You know what I mean? So when you talk with Quincy Jones, I've spent time with him. First of all, you don't know where that conversation is going to go. That man can talk, and it goes round and he loves it. And it goes round.
We've seen interviews.
Man, it's the same as what you see. The conversation goes round. Oh no, blah 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 blah. And he's genuine. He don't have, his true stories are so good that ain't no reason to lie. You know, so he knows everything and everyone. And, you know, he's like that older uncle that's just gonna sit you down. And if you're inquisitive, he's gonna sit you down and talk to you for hours if he has the time. You know,
because I'm thinking about how, you know, you are at a level of writing, creativity. And I think about, as you were speaking a little while ago, I'm just thinking, for some reason, Michael Jackson just popped in my head. And I'm thinking about the songs that were written for him, like Lady in My Life, and just different songs. I'm like, man, Quincy is just his touch is spread so far and it's so vast when you go from
Not just in music.
earlier jazz, like him as a trumpet player, to creating The Wiz, or creating writing the score for Color Purple, and
Mod
then
Squad. I mean,
I'm just
Sanford and Son. You got
crazy.
Fresh Prince. You got the African American Museum out in Washington D.C. Like it's a lot of. Well, to hear you get starstruck is something that's fascinating to me. So I got to ask a question as well.
Sure.
So I just want to, I got to read your resume a little bit. So you mentioned some of these names: Anita Baker, Angie Stone. These are folks that you work with: Brandy, Tamia, Gladys Knight, Shaka, Isley Brothers, Whitney, Beyonce, Usher, Patti LaBelle, Aretha Franklin. These folks are legendary. So when it comes to you handing your lyrics to somebody, do you still get starstruck? And if so, what's the most starstruck that you ever got when it came to these artists, or maybe some that I'm leaving off the list?
I mean, I'm starstruck, even not just with the stars. I'm every time you write a song with somebody, like if you collaborate with somebody, especially like sometimes producers give you music and they give you the music and I'm nervous every time, like, hey, what I came up with. And you're just like, ooh, is it okay? Do they like it? Like, I feel like that every time, even with guys who are great friends of mine for years, we've written tons of songs. I'm nervous like that every time, because I'm like, I hope they like it. You know what I mean? So so that feeling is there no matter who it is. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be a star for you to have that feeling.
Wow.
Like you that feelings comes from, you as a writer, you dug from something in your own heart, something in your own vulnerability. It's almost like reading out loud a public diary entry, and so you have that feeling, period, even before it's presented to an artist, but then when you present it to an artist, then of course, if you're a big fan of the artist, of course you're nervous and you hope that they like it. Usually by the time, if it makes it to a recording session and makes it to an artist, they
like it.
They usually like it. Not always. Not always. Because I do remember, there had been some sessions where some songs were picked by the record company and the artist did not like the songs.
And they let you know.
And they were not very often, but it has happened. And that's really hard, because you have to do your job. You have to turn it in for the record company anyway. And you have to just try to turn their energy around. You have to just try to make them like it, so to speak. Sometimes, I've heard Tina Turner give interviews how she hated Private Dancer. She did not like that song.
Really?
No, she did not like it. A lot of artists have given interviews how songs that became their first hits, how they didn't like it.
Yeah.
I remember I wrote For Your Love with Stevie J for Tevin Campbell. He was like, I don't like this song.
Really?
He said he did not like it. And the melody was, for your love, I would do most anything. He kept wanting to make it, for your love. And I was like, the melody is, for your love. I'm like, that is the melody.
That's one of my favorite songs by him.
He did not want to sing in that melody. So we ended up stacking the background vocals. I did most of them. He did some of them. And on some of his lead, it's hard to sing. Like, it's hard to hold that note for a long phrase like that.
Okay.
It is hard. It's hard. I understand I understand it.
It doesn't sound natural.
But it's a long phrase.
Yeah.
Then
it doesn't feel natural. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, that's the melody, so I'm like, that's, what it is. That's hard when you're in the booth with somebody and they're struggling a bit on the song, whatever, and you got to work through and you got to coach them. But that's when you just got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in your song. You've got to believe in it. You've got to lead it. And most of the time they're very happy afterwards, you know, when it comes out, and it comes out great. And you know, people love it, and it comes out great. And there's been times when people have thanked me. They're like, I know I was difficult that day. Thank you though. You know, you were right. Or, people have often come back like, afterwards and be like, even Whitney one time, she said she played One Wish for her mother. She said, Cecil's like, and why you ain't hold that note? Because it's like, I told her, I said, I wanted her to hit the note and hold the note. And she did hold it, but then she ended up doing this amazing run off of it. She said she played it, her mom was like, why didn't you hold the note? And which is what we were going at. She said, we're going to re-record it one day. We're going to re-release it. And I'm going to give you the that you wanted and that mama said she wanted too. So, sometimes in those times, if you're in the booth with somebody and it's challenging, because sometimes it's challenging for them to sing,
Yeah.
And I'm tough, I'm demanding. I would say I'm commanding. I don't think I'm demanding. I'm not like a taskmaster. I'm not yelling and shouting and screaming at people, but I'm like, I'm very clear, very precise. And, I want, you're going to sing your heart out with me. You just are.
The funny thing about you saying that, on Everything I Love, Barry and I were just talking about, before you hopped on, Barry said, I guarantee you, Gordon is very, like, it's this way. I swear, I'm not making it up. He literally just said it prior to you hopping on. Mr. I guarantee you, Gordon is this specific way. I need it like this. No, re-record it. I need it like this. He literally just stated that.
I'm pretty, I mean, I have that Virgo rising. I'm a Libra, but Virgo rising. So, but I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I've been in the booth with Babyface. I was like, wow, like this man is like 100 times more precise than
I feel like
I was, and then I thought anybody could ever be. Like I was like, he's like, again, and he was very patient, like, one more. I'm like,
he sounds just
to
like
get to the and to get to that.
One more do I have to find in me? But he wasn't. One more again. Very patient, but like very precise. So, it's interesting, like when I've been produced by other producers like Troy Taylor, now Troy is a taskmaster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Troy will yell at you and scream at you. Like he will yell and scream to get the vocal that he envisions, for whatever he's doing. Like he's very, very precise and great. He produces great vocals. He got great vocals out of me for my first 2 solo albums. I never, especially because beginning as an artist, I never thought I could sound like that, and I was amazed, like, what he got. And so I'm pretty thorough, I'm pretty precise, but I've been in the booth with way more, I would say even way more precise than me,
Okay. Out of your awards, out of your hit songs, out of your working with these iconic artists who you've worked with, producing and making your own albums and so forth, what would be the standalone, if there are any, accomplishment of your career? What would be?
I think that, I don't know, just moments like this, moments like doing this interview, to be really just a moment, I would say right now. Just right now, after 25 years in this game, almost 30 years, that, you guys would find me, write to me, and want to spend time with me and talk about my journey and want to put this out there with the intention of it being of inspiration and blessing to somebody else. That is the award. That is it.
Wow.
There's nothing, and I mean that, because you can get an award and put it on your mantle, go to an award show, take your classes, smile. That's a beautiful thing. Those moments, you'll never forget that, but they come and they go. A song can go up the chart and then it goes down the hearts. But when your body of work has touched people's hearts,
yes,
and something about your journey, your story, or your character really, and people show you to say, I emulate you, I want to be like you, that means more to me than anything. Anything. That's greater than any award. Because when you say that to me about me, you're talking to my parents, you're talking to my grandparents, you're talking to my aunts, you're talking to my uncles, you're talking to my teachers, you're talking to all the people that molded me. That's who you're talking to. Because when you see me, you're seeing a composite of all of that, all of those people in me that have made me who I am. And that's so when you see that in me and you say that, because many people may think that about you, but they don't say it to you. You know, I was on the phone the other day with a producer that's worked on my solo albums, Darren Dorsey, amazing record producer out in LA, who's like a younger brother to me, like a mentee to me. It's about 15 years younger than me.
Okay.
And he said to me just the other day, we were catching way and talked to him. He said, you know, G, he said, I admired you from before I even know you, but, you know, just getting to know you, you know, has been such a joy and a pleasure and honor of my life. He said, because you've been a living example of how to work in this business, you know, how to stay humble, how to stay sane, how to stay kind, you know, and to, you know, not lose yourself. You know, he said, you've been an example of that to many, many, many people, you know. And he said, especially, you know, he lived in New York, especially living out in LA. He said, there's been so many people, you know, that I've met whose work I've admired, but when I met them as a person, it was a disconnect, you know.
Yeah.
He said, you are who you are, you know. And he said that to me, and I was like, that means so much to me, you know. That means, you know, more, you know. Maya Angelou said it, you know, she said, people may not remember everything you said, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And Angela Winbush wrote for Stephanie Mills, something in the way you make me feel. And it makes me feel real good. You know, I just hope, you know, to make people feel good. You know, I hope to do that in a song that I've written, in a song, and a song that I've sang, you know, an interpretation of a song that I've sung for them, in a song I've produced, if I've taught you or coached you on a song in a musical lesson. I want music to be the love language, you know, that has made me touch your spirit and your soul in some kind of way.
Yeah.
And for those folks who haven't experienced your love language specifically, like, what's a way that they could actually connect with you to find out music that you got coming out, as well as track music that you have released? How could they keep up with you on social media?
Sure. I mean, my website is very comprehensive, gordonchambers.com. It has my whole discography. And my social media, it's all very easy. It's on Facebook, it's Gordon Chambers. On Instagram, it's Gordon Chambers. And Twitter, it's Gordon Chambers. I am Gordon Chambers.
Yeah, he's pretty simple.
You are Gordon Chambers. Yeah.
He keeps it simple.
I am.
Like
what you see is what you get. That's it.
Yeah. And we have all of that on the screen. Bill, as me and Bill talked about this prior, we were very excited about this interview. I really love talking to the folks who were involved in front of as well as behind the microphone.
Yes.
Bill, what's another way that folks could actually enlighten us on ways, like folks they want to see us interview?
Hey, you guys know what to do. Go to our comment section. We call it My 2 Cents, and leave you 2 cents. Ask Mr. Gordon any questions that you have. Obviously, you have the gamut from Whitney Houston to Usher to Tevin Campbell. Ask him any questions that you have. If you need to drop it on the comment section, we'll get it to him, or go to his Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, ask him the questions. But guys, you guys know what to do. Go to our 2 cents.
Cool. And then, hey, it's been a breath of fresh air, guys. Gordon, I want you to say peace out to the peoples. They'll check you out on social media. Everybody say peace.
Peace.
All right, cool.
And thank you guys. You guys are two beautiful hearts, good-hearted young men. Just I can feel. I can't wait till we meet in person, but I can feel that you guys are solid, straight up, loyal, well-raised Black man. So
Appreciate that.
But thank you so much.
And stay safe in these storms and be safe. And thank you again. It's been a real, truly a pleasure.
It was that
Appreciate you,
Love
man.
of Live album that did it, sir.
Okay. All right.